All right, now let me show you guys something that causes some confusion for students. All right, I'm going to come out of the loop, and I'm going to put right here system out print, and I'm going to put in a little leader too so we know this here. This is what we call the exit value of the loop, and I'm going to print num1. All right, so it's basically the same program I had before. I've just put in an extra bit of code. All right, should compile just fine, and it should run fine. All right, now this time when I run it, I'm going to put in 1 and 10 again. All right, and before I hit enter, I want you to think to yourself, what is num1 going to print? Is it going to print 1? Is it going to print 10? Is it going to print something else? It actually prints 11. Now that sometimes confuses students. They think, wait, how did it get to 11? Well, remember the process that took place here, right? The last number printed by the loop was 10. That's the last number printed by the loop. So it printed 10 right here. The very next thing that happened is num1 incremented itself. So at that point, what became the value of num1? It became 11. Now, at that point, the brace structure sent us back up to the control expression, and we asked, is 11 less than or equal to 10? And the answer was no. And so, just like with an if, once we see a false here, we exit the loop at this brace, and we start this line of code. But during that process, num1 did become 11. And we don't go back and change it. So like now that we saw false, we don't change our mind and say, oh no, let's send it back to 10 because it's got to be less than num2 or less than or equal to num2. No, it became 11. 11 caused the false, and it remained 11 at that point. That's why right here I actually printed 11 as the exit value. Okay, so that piece of code did happen. We call that the exit value of the loop. Okay. Now we're going to try like a slightly different task, all right, with our next while loop. So this time, instead of trying to print all the numbers from num1 to num2, I'm going to try to print the sum of all the numbers from num1 to num2 inclusive. Now, there's actually like a math formula I could look up for this, an arithmetic sum, but instead of doing like a math formula, arithmetic sum, we're going to try to accomplish this with a while loop again. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize a new variable called sum to 0. And I'm going to use this to track the sum through the loop. We do this quite often. Okay, and I'm going to write another while loop, just like before, using a brace structure. Okay, it's going to have a control expression. One thing I'm going to do differently this time is, instead of printing inside the loop, I'm going to wait until the loop is finished to put my print statement. And so right here, I'm going to say system out print ln. I'll just say something like the sum is, and then I'll print my sum variable. Okay, so a little different structure. I'm going to use the loop to do the math, to figure out the sum. And then at the end of the process, I'll print what that sum is. Okay? All right. All right, so now, very similar to my last one, what I would do is instead of printing, I'll take my sum variable. I could either do a plus equals, or I could say sum equals sum plus num1. So I'll start with just num1. So if the user gives me a 1 and a 10, I'll add 1 to the sum. Then I'd want to add 2, 3, all the way up to 10, but not past 10. So just like before, I'll go ahead and increment num1. Okay? And I think we can use the same exact control expression. Num1 less than or equal to num2. So eventually, num1 will outgrow num2 and we'll quit this process. All right, let's see if this little code can do what we're asking of it. All right, so let's say the user gives us a 1 and a 10. 55, that's correct. That's the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 10. Okay? Or if we give it an easier one, like say 4 and 6, that's 15. 4 plus 5 plus 6 is 15. Now, just like before, unfortunately, we didn't write the greatest program on earth, so if we reverse the numbers, it would say 0 because the loop here didn't actually run. If that initial condition is false, okay, just like an if, no different than an if statement. If that initial condition, what we call the control expression, is false, then you skip all of the code in the brace structure. Now, we still reached our print statement. It's just the sum was stuck at 0 because it didn't actually do any addition, right? So, okay, that's what happens if you're initially false.